I do have a little bit, and then I'll say your name. So our speakers today, our presentation today is the Clay County Historical Preservation Commission. I stole this from your website, so tell me if this is wrong. The mission of the Clay County Historical Preservation Commission is to promote, advise, and educate residents of Clay County, South Dakota about the importance of preserving historical sites. This is accomplished by supporting existing and identifying potential new sites in historical districts in Clay County, holding open meetings and workshops to help residents learn about preservation of historic buildings, documenting and publishing information in booklets, tour guides, and books about preservation and historic sites, and collaborating with Clay County entities to maintain and restore historic sites. Hope I didn't ruin the punchline of the preservation or the presentation today. Historic, thank you. So I'll start by introducing Patrick Morrison, who's the treasurer of the Historic Preservation Commission.
All right, so we're gonna, first, I don't want to steal Evelyn's thunder here, but if I am saying anything that she'll cover, I'm sure she'll, speed ahead in that presentation. But so we've been doing these now here at Rotary for several years now. So the goal of these awards are to recognize people within Clay County that have both sometimes organizations, sometimes individuals for historic preservation work, whether that's maintaining structures or rehabilitating structures. And so a lot of our award recipients today have been actively engaged in that for some time. So we do have several members of our board here. So Tom Sorensen, past president. Let's see, I don't know. Jim Stone, member. I see Jim Wilson, past president as well. See Evelyn Schlenker, of course. I think that's everybody. But we also have several other members that couldn't be here today. But so I'd like to introduce Evelyn Schlenker. She's our secretary of our organization, and she's going to give kind of more of an introduction to why we do these awards, and then about the individual recipients, many of whom are here today. All here today, good. So, and they'll have opportunities to speak as well on, if they so choose, on their projects as well. So Evelyn, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I don't have to show that whole slide on our mission now. I'll just skip over that one. So yeah, we're the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission, and I have the website there because all of our publications are located there and a lot of other information. It's very comprehensive. So if you're interested in reading articles, books, tour booklets, we've got it all there. And so I'm going to skip over that one. And this is just to mention all the people who are on our board right now. Tim Schreiner couldn't be here. Jim Wilson is here, Patrick, myself, Dennis Conkler, Michelle, Monica Iverson, Bill Ranney, Tom Sorensen, Jim Stone, and Victoria Job. So again, in the categories that we have for today for preservation awards, it could be restoration of a number of structures, complete rehabilitation of a structure, and also preserving the integrity of the structure. We have a special recognition for historic preservation that's going to go to Jim Stone, and this is the second replica of the first schoolhouse in Clay County, Dakota Territory. And not only Jim Stone, but some other folks worked on it, and Jim can tell you about that later. Okay, so in terms of project, I had the privilege of going to the Farmer's Daughter's Sewing Museum, which is on Bluff Road, and Sally was there, and we chatted, and the first thing I did was take pictures of this iconic building. So the red building is what it looks like now, and the top building was the building that Jim Stone surveyed in 2013. So the original livestock building was built by Ole Larson in 1894. So architecturally, it's very similar. There was also a lean-to put on to extend the museum. And all I can say is it's spectacular. I was so pleased going there. So the owners are Richard and Sally Abild, and they'll talk a little bit more about what they did later on. The Main Street Inn, which I'm sure you've seen, was the charter house of the Beta Theta Pi. It was actually built in 1925, and from the 1929 Coyote Yearbook, this is what it looked like. Of course, I took a picture of a picture, so it's not always as clear. But Tim Schreiner took a picture of what it looks like now, and you can see the similarity of the outside of the building. So the facade was incredibly well preserved. Sigmund New took it over in 1968 and occupied it from 1970 to 2015. And then Carson and Courtney Merkwan bought it, and with the help of Sandy Dickinson and others, made it into partially their home and also a bed and breakfast. So I'm sure we will hear more about that later. Donna and Pat Gross were instrumental in renovating a number of buildings well within a neighborhood I consider my hood because I live down there in that area. And the 4 buildings that they rehabilitated was really with the intent of having single-family homes. And a number of these buildings had been the sleeping quarters or apartments, and this is all within the historical district or putative historic district on Forest and Lewis Avenue, Forest Street and I'm sorry, Forest Avenue and Lewis Street. So this one, which they lived in, which 310 Forest Avenue, was built in 1917, and then it was purchased by the Grosses in 1971 and fully restored. Pat told me that Mary and Bill Janklow, I'm sure you all know who Bill Janklow was, lived there while he was going to law school. So it has infamy associated with it. The other houses on Lewis, this is 213 and 215. The 213 house, which is the one on the top, which is an absolutely beautiful structure, was built in 1911 by H.B. Palm, and in 1913 was bought by George Spark, and was a place for the Thompson lumber workers to live in. In 1945, Susan Alger Crawford purchased it and built this ranch house over here, and then rented out 213 to faculty members. And the Grosses purchased both houses and totally renovated them. And there are details. I mean, they have great detail in terms of what they did. Both houses are located on the bluff, the southern part of, I guess, Forest and Lewis, around there. So it overlooks the bluff. So it's a beautiful location there. Another house that I thought was iconic, had no idea of the history of it, was 300 Lewis Street, and this was built in 1875 by W.O. DeVay, and in 1916 it was again, as many of the houses in the Forest Avenue district were moved. There was a big movement of houses. The Grosses purchased it in 2016 and made multiple renovations to the house. It's absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful house. And then I want to transition to very special recognition for historic preservation to Jim Stone. And I'm dividing it into two areas. One area is documenting preservation, and the second area is doing it. So in terms of documenting preservation, Jim did an extensive barn survey of over 360 barns in Clay County. He told me he had a great time doing it. If there were more, he would do more. He also wrote 2 books, one, The Danish Brick Barn and Log Cabin. This is a barn that was built, the brick barn was built in 1878 and is now gone. So by writing this book with extensive documentation of the building, it survives. The other one, which was a book about the Burr Broom Factory, which had been in Vermillion for about 100 years, that building is gone too. But there's documentation of the history of it and what the actual building looked like. He's also co-authored booklets on the construction of the Thompson House fireplace and the construction of the Thompson exhibit at the W.H. Over. So that's just documenting preservation. The second area is pursuing preservation, and this is in a number of different areas. One was helping to construct the second replica of the first schoolhouse in Vermillion. And I showed you a picture of that before. He also worked on the A.W. house, the Austin Whitmore house, where he refurbished the Widow's Watch, which is on the top of that building. It's tough to see because there's a tree there. The construction of a beautiful ramp, and also a bathroom at the Austin Whitmore house. And then Jim has done a lot at the W.H. Over. He helped create the Thompson exhibit. And this is a picture of Jim in the blue shirt working with Gary Bottleson, who passed away this year, sadly, hanging French doors that sat in the Pink House or the Thompson House. So if you get a chance to come over to the W.H. Over, please see that. He's also worked on a lot of other exhibits, and in particular, extensively on the farm exhibit, the Fargo Farm exhibit, which is also something you need to come to the museum to see. So that's all I have in terms of the program. But what I'd like to do next is give the certificates, frame certificates for the Preservation Awards with Patrick helping. And the first are Sally and Richard. If you could come up here.
Maybe just do it down there.
First of all, I would like to actually recognize my husband, because he's the really recipient of this award. We started 5 years ago. I had 20 vintage machines that needed a home, and so we put them in this old barn by our house. And then I engaged the help of my 4 sisters and my mother. And because of our interest and their interest in sewing, they started bringing back machines when they'd come to see our mother. And they're from Texas and New Jersey and Colorado. So they had access to markets that I didn't have, but it just started out as a hobby that kind of went amok. And after, like I said, we started 5 years ago. We didn't have a museum as an idea in the beginning, but as the machines kept coming in, they would go home and come back to see my mother. They would be lugging another one back that they had found. And so we finally decided, hey, we have to have a plan, because otherwise we're just going to be considered hoarders of machines. And so we started putting them in order, started doing some research. A couple of the brother-in-laws got involved, and then after the first year, we had an open house, and then it was kind of fun, and people were really interested. I couldn't believe people were interested in vintage machines. But over the years now, I've figured out that there are a lot of people who are. But like I said, I want to give my husband recognition, because he is the one that has stood by me through this whole crazy 5 years. He's found the carpenters and the painters, the electricians. He's even helped stuff insulation and put ceilings up, and we have a furnace. And he was behind me all the way. So he really is the one that deserves the recognition for the preservation. So, okay, thank you.
The next award goes to Carson and Courtney for the Main Street Inn.
Thank you for this. This is wonderful. When Courtney and I moved to Vermillion, we were trying to think of something that we could do to restore a house, and we saw this one, and it just kind of talked to us. I think most people thought we were a little crazy, but we went and bought it, and then we told Sandy after we bought it that she needs to help us, so it was fun. But we ended up turning it into a bed and breakfast. It was a fraternity for almost 100 years now, 1925, and I think they started construction in 1919, so it's been going on for 100 years, and by my estimate, roughly 3,000 fraternity boys had lived in the house, and it's pretty interesting because we get to see some of these men come back and relive their memories, and even though we've renovated it quite a bit, it's amazing. They'll say, it's just like I remembered it, and hopefully not, but rose-colored glasses, it's nice. And so we just let them think that, and they really enjoy their time. But really, you know, it's a bed and breakfast. It's just a place to stay and a place to be. What really sells it is Vermillion, and what everybody's doing in town here to make things work has been wonderful. Between the university and the games and what everybody in town here does really makes this work. It wouldn't work if it were anywhere else. So thank you for this, and thank you Vermillion for being a great town to be in.
Our next award goes to Donna and Pat Gross for renovating a number of houses in the Forest Avenue, Lewis Street district.
We're very happy to be here, especially because we started looking for a parking place at 8 o'clock this morning. Since I was an administrator here, I see nothing has changed. It's still a hunting permit. Is that right? So we parked over someplace south of Old Main, I think, and came into the wind here for quite a while. But you've seen some of the detail on what we did. It was purely coincidental over all the years that we lived in the historic district. We had actually hoped that there would be more activity in that district, but there has been a lot of really meaningful work there, and it's been a lot of fun. For those of you that know me, you know I prefer to speak off the cuff, but my manager, which I refer to, Donna, occasionally, said not today. So we did put a couple of things together, and rather than talk about our projects, I think there's a couple of other things that we'd like to say. And Donna and I really do thank the Commission and all the people involved in this recognition and honor. We believe that we represent a lot of people in this town who have worked to restore and preserve their homes, not only in the historic districts, but other places. It's important to us, but it's also important to Vermillion, a river town with a lot of character and history. Community character and history do not survive on their own. They're nurtured by individuals, groups, and community members who love this place for its uniqueness. Our years here have left us proud to call Vermillion our home, and we, of course, would not trade it for the world. Historic preservation and restoration work in many ways endear us to our community. Both are critical to our Vermillion culture. But it's more than that. It's work and dedication to preservation that captures our attention and makes a statement to fellow citizens, our state, and regional communities. Several meaningful and productive examples of preservation work and commitment by dedicated individuals, whom we often call caretakers, continue to enhance our community and culture. People like Jim Stone and so many others, as well as board members and organizational members who dedicate time and their personal resources, all combine to make this a better place to live. At the risk of leaving something out, let me mention some of the preservation work that's gone on in this community over the years that make us proud. Excuse me. The W.H. Overy Museum, the Austin Whittemer House Project, the Log Schoolhouse, the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission, the Clay County Historical Society, the Vermillion Historic Preservation Commission, Old Main and the traditions of the university, our Main Street architecture, and our historic courthouse, the National Music Museum, the restoration and repurpose of the Sigma Newhouse, the recent restoration work of the UCC. They're just a few examples of why this community is unique. We have so many treasures that deserve our attention and support. Each have been nurtured by individuals who care about where they live and make us the envy of hundreds of communities. Let us not forget that this community has been blessed with talented tradespeople who dedicate their knowledge and resources to quality restoration work as they nurture our historic culture. They've proven to be extremely valuable to our community and our image. In many cases, they put up with homeowners such as ourselves who did a lot of hands-on work to preserve our properties. We strongly encourage you to seek them out and to work with them on your project should you be involved in restoration or other work. Yes, there's a recurring 11% discount at Menards, but we have local businesses and their families who work and live in this community that need our support. So while this community looks forward and is contemporary in many ways, it also must not overlook the value of our former and present caretakers who work to preserve our treasures and our Rivertown culture. These caretakers have contributed greatly to the social capital we all enjoy. So again, Donna and I appreciate this recognition. Quite frankly, it's a humbling reminder of how important it is to continue preservation and restoration work in this valuable community. Thank you.
Last but not least at all, I'd like to have Jim Stone come up here. Yes, Jim, you have to come up here. Reluctantly. This is for a very special recognition for all the things that Jim Stone has done in Vermillion. And I'd like him to possibly say a few words about his. Well, yeah, but you can't do the whole book. But why don't you come up here?
First off, thank you for the great meal. That's a reason to come here. I feel, I don't know how to word this. I don't feel that I really should get this award for me only. I've got a whole table of people back there that have helped, and I would like to recognize those people. As I wrote, I said, I better get my glasses out because I can't see. As I cannot take credit for all of these projects. And I didn't do them for recognition. I did them because I wanted to preserve history. There is so much history in this area. It is unbelievable. And if we don't record it, it's going to get lost. The first project that I got involved in, and I have to thank Gene Hawkins, because he's the one that had the equipment to do this. But anyway, the Widow's Watch, and you all know what a Widow's Watch is? Something that started on the East Coast for the captain's wife to go up in and wait for her husband to come in with his ship, and a lot of them didn't come. But anyway, it was leaking something terrible. The plaster was falling down in the hallway upstairs, and I asked if we could replace the flashing and fix the windows. And one of the members said, we have had professionals here, have tried and have failed. So how could I repair it? Well, Gene and I did. And Gene even had the cutters to make new pieces for the bottom of the windows and some of the side pieces because they were plain rotted out. And after we got these all done, we primed painted and reglazed all the windows, and then we put combination windows on over top of that, and it hasn't leaked since. The next project was one that's near and dear to me. But from 2011 to 2014, this project took 3 years. And I had joined the Clay County Historical Preservation Commission in 2011. A project request came down from PEER, the South Dakota Historical Preservation, for a person or a group to record all of the pre-1960 barns in Clay County. I raised my hand right away. I'm going to do this. And what a project. I loved every minute, every hour of it. But I'd like to recognize some people that really helped. And Marion Kruger, who has since passed away, got me into the Meckling and the Norway townships. He'd go around and talk to these guys, would you like to have your barn surveyed? Well, if it don't cost anything, yeah. And he would line up barns there first part of the week, and I was working up in the Glenwood Garfield area in that latter part of the week. Some weeks they'd do 10 barns a week, and that's just the start. It would go into midnight just drawing and writing and recording and filling out all the paperwork. But anyway, I want to especially recognize Dick and Louise Gregoire. They actually invited neighbors to their house and then invited me there. And boy, that spread like wildfire. Clear up into Star Township. And I can't thank them enough. Arden Abel was there. The Jensens up in Garfield and Glenwood. I swear that half of the land up there is owned by Jensens, and that's spelled S-E-N. And then towards the end, which, well, about the last 200 barns, Dwayne Schelling, most of you probably know him. He was the draftsman for the Vermillion City, and he had retired, and he was looking for something to do. And he asked if he could ride along, and I said, sure. You can hold the smart end of the tape. He helped with about the last 200 barns. I was sad when this project was over. And there were not 2 barns in all of Clay County that were the same. There was always some little thing that was different. 2014, I was asked to repair the 1860 replica of the first log cabin school in Dakota Territory. And as I inspected it, all the corners were rotted out. The bottom log was rounded like this. The next log was set into that. So any place that chinking fell out, water ran in, and all the corners were just pretty much rotted out. So I told him what was going on, and I reported that building a second would probably be the only possibility, a second replica. And I was asked if I'd ever built a log cabin school. I said no, but I'd like to learn. And encouragement from Gene Hawkins, who had a sawmill, and he knew where there was a whole bunch of cottonwood logs down by the river. So the logs didn't cost us anything except haul them up to the sawmill. And we learned a lot. And we got it up about 4 logs high. Every day there was a crowd watching. And we tore it all down because the logs weren't perfect 90-degree angle. One wall would tip out this way and one was tipping in. So we tore it down, used I think it was a 12-inch planer, wasn't it, Gene? And planed all those so it had a perfect 90-degree angle. Went up a lot better then. The only bad thing is that when we tried to figure out a bid on this thing, we figured way too few hours to redo these, or to do all of these logs. I think it amounted to about 4 times the time that we thought it was going to be. But I was still trying to solve the problem of how to keep these logs from rotting out in the corners. And I came up with, doing some research for building log cabins, I came up with this V-notch in Norway in 1790. And I'd already had this solved in my head and didn't realize it. And some of my best thinking is in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, and in the morning I wake up and there it is. And it's a V-notch. The top of the log is like this, and then you set another V over top of it. Water can never run in, it always runs out. But I came up with this idea in research that it was first done in Norway in 1790. And then it was copied by Sweden and later by Denmark. And we had a really big laugh over this one. But by trial and error, we built a schoolhouse that will last many years, and it was the most fun, interesting, educational project I've ever been involved in, thanks to Gene. Next project was a handicap ramp at the Austin Whittemore House. And many of our members and just friends couldn't make it up the steps to get into the house. And so we designed a handicap ramp. And again, go to Gene. And at that time, there was a death. John Beloshi, Gene's son, Chris, and his daughter, Erin, were there. And I don't know how many days that was, but we were cutting, sanding, and fixing all the balusters for that. And Don Forthess, who primed and painted all the balusters. And Jonah Wandenberg was here. And probably the most interesting thing and the most educational thing is that Gene built a steamer to steam handrails to have a round at the bottom, well, I should say at the landing, go up, around, and then back up. And it worked. I didn't know you could bend a piece of wood that much by steaming it. And I think I mentioned everybody that was involved in that one. Then we could get the people in the house, but we couldn't get them up the second floor because they couldn't climb the stairs. And so the next year, we built a bathroom and a pantry on the first floor. And as the outside steps, well, you know that. And this was a major project. The house itself is on the historical register, both South Dakota and national, so it has to match. Well, we found some pictures, and there was an old open porch on that side of the house that had been torn off. So we copied it, put walls in, and built a bathroom, and it looks like it belongs there. Most people don't realize it was missing. Then in 2020, 2021, we took on a huge project. When they decided they were going to tear down the Thompson House, or Pink House as some people call it, we went to them and asked if we could salvage things to make a exhibit at the W.H. Over Museum to remember some of this history, to keep some of this history. And I have to give credit to Gary Bottleson, another one who is deceased, Larry Bradley, Sam Begay, Evelyn Schrenkler. By the way, she can learn fast. And Brad Woggy. And without these volunteers, this job would never have gotten done. But anyway, we started the project 2020, September 2020, and finished in April 21. It's 8 months. It was a very large undertaking. We removed a complete fireplace, piece by piece, down to the ceramic tile. And then we cleaned ceramic tile and cleaned ceramic tile, and that took about a month. We also got some antique doors, woodwork, antique hardware, oak flooring, a lot of wainscoting, found some original cedar siding that had covered the outside walls of the original house, and that was covered with Sioux quartzite at later times when they remodeled. And that particular siding was off the house that was built in 1873. Thanks to Evelyn, we found 4 layers of original wallpaper. It had all been painted, so nobody knew it was even there. And this was some expensive wallpaper, like gold gilded. The fireplace itself had been painted. There was a regular mantle and an upper mantle, and think of their name now, that lived there before, she had started, Ferris, she had started to strip the paint off that fireplace. And then George died, and she just kind of lost interest, and they sold it. But that paint was in every little crevice, crack, what have you. We actually got down to using dental picks to get the last of the paint out. And then cleaning the oak flooring wasn't a picnic either. That took a long time. That kind of is a summary of most of these projects. And again, I do not want to claim all the work. I didn't do all the work. We had all these people back here, plus others that have helped. And I thanks for the award, but I wish I could give a plaque to each one of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We really appreciate presenting this at Rotary, and hopefully next year we'll show more preservation in Clay County. People who think this area, this town, is very important in keeping the history alive. Thank you.